Imagine the biting wind sweeping across the high plateau, carrying the scent of dust, fear, and the metallic tang of destiny. It is March 1st, 1896, a day etched in fire and blood, a moment of searing truth that reverberated across continents, challenging the very foundations of global power. For decades, the European colonial machine had advanced relentlessly, an unstoppable tide devouring ancient kingdoms, redrawing maps with casual arrogance, and enforcing its will with an iron fist across an entire continent. From the sun-baked savannas to the dense emerald jungles, the story was always the same. Indigenous resistance, valiant but ultimately doomed, crushed beneath the gears of industrial might and overwhelming firepower. But in the rugged, mystical highlands of Abyssinia, a different narrative was being forged, one of audacious defiance and unprecedented triumph. Here, on the plains of Adwa, a nascent European power, replete with cutting-edge weaponry and an unshakable belief in its racial and technological supremacy, was not merely challenged, but decisively, catastrophically shattered. The echoes of that battle still resonate today. The thunder of thousands of hooves on parched earth, the staccato crack of rifles echoing through the valleys, the primal roar of men fighting not for conquest, but for the very soul of their nation. It was a victory so profound, so utterly improbable, that it sent shockwaves through the marbled halls of European capitals and ignited a spark of hope across a subjugated continent. How could a fledgling African empire, seemingly isolated and technologically outmatched, manage to not only resist, but utterly rout a formidable European army? How could it stand as the sole bastion of unyielding independence in a world increasingly carved up by colonial greed? The conventional wisdom of the era, which decreed the inevitable subjugation of all non-European peoples, was here, dramatically, violently disproven. The answer to this monumental riddle lies deep within the strategic brilliance, the diplomatic cunning, and the iron will of one extraordinary man, Emperor Menelik II, the Lion of Judah. His is the forbidden history of an empire that refused to die, and of the visionary leader who, against all odds, made the impossible, gloriously real, securing a legacy of freedom that endures to this very day. Into this maelstrom of ambition and vulnerability stepped Menelik II, a figure of destined greatness born into the ancient Solomonic dynasty, whose lineage claimed descent from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Yet, his path to power was anything but predetermined. Born in 1844, he was named Sal Miriam, a boy of royal blood in a land frequently torn by internal rivalries and power struggles. His early life was marked by adversity. As a young prince, he was imprisoned by Emperor Tewodros II, a powerful but volatile ruler who sought to centralize Ethiopia's fragmented kingdoms. This period of captivity, though harsh, proved formative. It was within those confines that Menelik, stripped of his princely comforts, learned the invaluable lessons of patience, observation, and the intricate dance of power. He studied his captor, absorbed the political currents of the court, and honed a cunning intellect that would serve him throughout his life. He dreamed not just of freedom, but of uniting his fractured homeland, understanding that only through internal strength could Ethiopia hope to withstand the looming external threats. Upon his escape in 1865, Menelik began his arduous ascent. He first reclaimed his ancestral kingdom of Shewa, meticulously consolidating his power, not merely through conquest, but through shrewd alliances, diplomatic marriages, and an astute understanding of local customs and loyalties. He was a visionary who recognized the need for modernization, importing European weapons, advisors, and technology, not to mimic the West, but to arm his nation for its own defense. His court became a hub of innovation, embracing telegraph lines, postal services, and even a nascent railway system, all designed to strengthen Ethiopia from within. He expanded his empire's borders, integrating diverse peoples and forging a sense of shared Ethiopian identity, often with a mix of force and persuasion. By 1889, after the death of Emperor Johannes IV, Menelik's strategic brilliance and diplomatic acumen finally culminated in his coronation as Emperor of Ethiopia, assuming the regal name Menelik II. He was a leader forged in fire, a master strategist whose very being embodied the ancient spirit of a nation determined to survive and thrive in a world eager to see it fall. Menelik's reign, though marked by significant internal reforms and territorial expansion, would soon be defined by a colossal confrontation with the Italian colonialists. The spark that ignited this inevitable conflict was the infamous Treaty of Wuchale, signed in 1889, the very year of Menelik's coronation. On the surface, it appeared to be a treaty of friendship and cooperation between Ethiopia and Italy, recognizing Italian control over Eritrea in exchange for loans and military assistance to Ethiopia. However, a crucial and ultimately catastrophic discrepancy existed between the Amharic and Italian versions of Article 17. The Amharic text stated that Ethiopia could use the good offices of Italy for its foreign affairs if it chose to, implying a voluntary option. The Italian version, chillingly, stated that Ethiopia must conduct all its foreign affairs through Italy, effectively rendering Ethiopia an Italian protectorate. This subtle but profound difference was either a grave error in translation or, more likely, a deliberate act of diplomatic deception by the Italians, who believed they had legally acquired a claim over Ethiopia's sovereignty. Upon discovering this insidious discrepancy, Menelik, a man of profound pride and an unyielding commitment to his nation's independence, was outraged. He immediately denounced the Italian version as fraudulent and unacceptable. For years, he had cautiously engaged in diplomacy with European powers, playing them against each other, always with an eye towards securing Ethiopia's autonomy. He had built up his arsenal, acquired modern rifles and artillery, and strategically expanded his empire not out of aggression, but as a bulwark against encroaching European ambitions. The Treaty of Wuchale, in the Italian interpretation, represented a betrayal of trust and an existential threat. It was a direct assault on the very essence of Ethiopian sovereignty, a move that would reduce his ancient empire to just another European possession. Menelik's response was immediate and unequivocal. He abrogated the treaty in 1893, sending a clear, defiant message to Rome. The diplomatic charade was over. The stage was set for war, a clash that would determine not only Ethiopia's fate, but also send a powerful, indelible message across the entire African continent. As Menelik abrogated the Treaty of Wuchale, the air crackled with the inevitability of war. Italy, stung by the perceived insult and driven by an escalating imperialistic fervor, began to pour resources into its Eritrean colony. General Oreste Baratieri, the Italian governor, scoffed at the idea of an African army standing against his well-drilled, technologically superior forces. Italian newspapers boasted of an easy conquest, dismissing Menelik's army as a collection of disorganized, spear-wielding natives. Their arrogance was palpable, a fatal flaw that would cost them dearly. But Menelik was no fool. He understood the disparities in firepower, but he also knew the strengths of his people and the rugged terrain of his homeland. He issued a proclamation, a call to arms that resonated through every village and mountain pass, reminding his people of their ancient heritage and the sacred duty to defend their independence. "If you refuse to follow me," he declared, "you will be without a country, and you will be left to the mercies of the Europeans." The response was a testament to Menelik's magnetic leadership and the deep-seated patriotism of the Ethiopian people. From every corner of his vast empire, men answered the call. Farmers left their fields, shepherds their flocks, tribal warriors their ancient feuds. The army that began its epic march south towards Adwa was a truly national force, a vibrant tapestry of Ethiopia's diverse ethnic groups, Amhara, Oromo, Tigrayan and others, united under the banner of the Lion of Judah. This was no ragtag band. It was a disciplined, albeit uniquely structured fighting force. While many still carried traditional shields and swords, thousands were armed with modern rifles purchased from various European powers, a testament to Menelik's foresight and diplomatic prowess. As they marched, a vast column stretching for miles through the unforgiving mountains, the logistical challenge was immense. Supplies were carried by mules and porters. The sheer grit and determination of the soldiers, fueled by a burning desire to protect their homeland from foreign subjugation. The impending clash was not merely a battle, It was a confrontation of wills, a struggle for identity, and a desperate gamble for the very soul of a nation. The prelude to the Battle of Adwa was a grueling test of endurance and strategy. For weeks, the vast Ethiopian army, estimated at over 100,000 men, shadowed the Italian forces, conserving their strength while slowly drawing the enemy deeper into the treacherous Ethiopian highlands. Menelik, supported by his brilliant wife Empress Betul and his loyal generals, demonstrated masterful tactical patience. He understood that time and terrain were his allies. The Italian supply lines were stretched thin, their soldiers suffering from disease and the harsh environment, their morale eroding with each passing day. General Baratieri, under pressure from Rome to achieve a decisive victory, found himself in an increasingly untenable position, his forces scattered across defensive positions in the Tigray region. He knew he needed to act, but every move was fraught with risk. On the night of February 29, 1896, under the cover of darkness, Baratieri made his fateful decision. Believing the Ethiopian army was short on supplies and preparing to retreat, he ordered a surprise night march, aiming to occupy a strong ridge overlooking Adwa and force a decisive engagement at dawn. His plan was to outflank Menelik, to catch the Ethiopians off guard and unleash his superior firepower. But Menelik's intelligence network was superb. His scouts tracked every Italian movement. As the Italian brigades began their advance, unaware that their every step was being watched, Menelik was already mobilizing his own forces. The stage was now perfectly set for the most consequential battle in modern African history. The cool night air of the Ethiopian plateau carried the hushed whispers of anticipation, the clink of weaponry, and the silent prayers of men on both sides, unknowingly marching towards a rendezvous with destiny. The sun, when it finally pierced the pre-dawn darkness, would illuminate a landscape destined to be forever stained with the blood of empires. Dawn broke on March 1st, 1896, not with the gentle warmth of a new day, but with a frigid mountain wind carrying the scent of impending doom for the Italian forces. General Baratieri's ill-fated night march had led his brigades into a chaotic disarray, strung out across a rugged, unfamiliar terrain of deep ravines and steep ridges. The surprise attack he had envisioned was now turning into a tactical nightmare. Menelik's forces, already positioned and prepared, unleashed a ferocious counterattack. The battle erupted into a maelstrom of sound and fury. Italian artillery thundered, sending plumes of dust and earth skyward, but their aim was often hampered by the broken terrain. Rifle fire crackled relentlessly, thousands of rounds exchanged in a deadly dance across the valleys. The screams of men, the dying cries of horses, and the desperate shouts of officers blended into a terrifying symphony of war. The Ethiopian forces, fighting with an unparalleled ferocity for their homeland, were not merely a reactive force. Menelik and his generals, notably Ras Makonnen, father of the future Emperor Haile Selassie, and the formidable Empress Taitu, directed their armies with strategic brilliance. They exploited the Italian disorganization, using their knowledge of the terrain to outflank and encircle the enemy. The sheer numbers of the Ethiopian army, far exceeding Italian expectations, began to overwhelm the beleaguered European brigades. The Italian army, comprised of both Italian regulars and Askari, Eritrean colonial troops, fought bravely, but they were isolated, their lines of communication severed, their morale plummeting. Brigade after brigade found itself surrounded, facing relentless charges from Ethiopian warriors who seemed to emerge from the very rocks and shadows. The meticulously planned colonial conquest was rapidly descending into a desperate fight for survival, a bloody, chaotic spectacle that would utterly redefine the power dynamics of the continent. The dream of a grand Italian East African empire was swiftly dissolving into a nightmare of blood-soaked earth. The Battle of Adwa reached its terrifying crescendo by midday. The Italian strategy had completely unraveled. General Baratieri's forces were no longer fighting a coordinated offensive, but a series of isolated, desperate holding actions. The Ethiopian cavalry, led by fearless generals, swept through the exposed Italian flanks, while infantry, armed with rifles and traditional blades, engaged in brutal hand-to-hand combat. The fighting was savage, intimate, and utterly unforgiving. The cold mountain air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and blood. Menelik, observing the unfolding chaos, made critical decisions that sealed the Italian fate, committing his strategic reserves at precisely the right moment to deliver devastating blows to the already crumbling Italian lines. Empress Titu, a formidable commander in her own right, famously took personal command of a large contingent, demonstrating an unwavering resolve that inspired her troops. The Italian losses mounted rapidly. Entire brigades were annihilated. General Albertone's Italian brigade, bravely holding a critical position, was finally overwhelmed after hours of tenacious fighting, its remnants either captured or cut down. The sheer ferocity and numerical superiority of the Ethiopians, coupled with their intimate knowledge of the terrain, proved insurmountable. The dream of an easy colonial victory evaporated into a horrifying rout. The Italian soldiers, once so confident, now fled in disarray, discarding their weapons and equipment in a desperate attempt to escape the pursuing Ethiopian warriors. The retreat quickly became a desperate, every-man-for-himself scramble for survival, exacerbated by the relentless pursuit through the unforgiving terrain. The snow-capped peaks surrounding Adwa, which had witnessed centuries of history, now bore silent witness to the most devastating defeat of a European army by an African force in the era of colonialism. The crimson stains on the earth were not just the blood of men, but the death of an illusion, the shattering of European arrogance against the unbreakable will of a free people. When the dust finally settled on the blood-soaked plains of Adwa, the magnitude of the Ethiopian victory was staggering. The Italian army had been utterly decimated. More than 6,000 Italian soldiers were dead, 1,500 wounded, and approximately 4,000 taken prisoner. The vast majority of their artillery, rifles, and supplies fell into Ethiopian hands, a tangible trophy of their triumph. In stark contrast, Ethiopian losses, though significant, were far less. News of the disaster sent shockwaves across Europe. Italy, a proud and ambitious nation, was humiliated. The Prime Minister, Francesco Crispi, resigned in disgrace, and the nation plunged into a period of profound self-reflection and political turmoil. Adwa shattered the myth of European racial and military invincibility, a myth carefully cultivated to justify the brutal subjugation of non-European peoples. It was a humiliating blow to the colonial project, a stark and undeniable proof that African nations, when united and strategically led, could not only resist but decisively defeat the mightiest of European powers. For Ethiopia, the victory was nothing short of miraculous, a glorious vindication of their ancient independence. Menelik II emerged as a global figure, a defiant symbol of African sovereignty. His victory cemented Ethiopia's place on the world stage as an independent nation, forcing European powers to respect its borders and engage with it on terms of equality. Diplomats from across Europe soon flocked to Addis Ababa, Menelik's newly established capital, eager to establish relations and secure treaties. The emperor, ever the shrewd statesman, skillfully navigated these new diplomatic waters, ensuring that Ethiopia's hard-won independence was not undermined by new forms of political or economic encroachment. Adwa became more than just a battle. It became an enduring symbol of resistance, inspiring liberation movements and Pan-African aspirations for generations to come. It was a clarion call heard across the subjugated continent, whispering the forbidden truth. Freedom, though dearly bought, was an achievable dream. In the aftermath of Adwa, Menelik II stood at the zenith of his power, a living legend who had not only preserved his nation's ancient sovereignty, but elevated its stature on the global stage. Yet his vision for Ethiopia extended far beyond military triumph. He understood that true independence required not just military strength but also modernization and internal cohesion. He embarked on an ambitious program of reform, laying the foundations for a modern state. He established Ethiopia's first modern hospital, introduced Western-style education, and initiated projects to improve infrastructure, including roads, bridges, and telegraph lines, crucial for both defense and economic development. He encouraged the exploration of mineral resources, sought foreign investment, and even planned for a national bank. Addis Ababa, meaning new flower, rapidly transformed from a seasonal camp into a burgeoning capital city, a testament to his progressive leadership. Menelik's diplomatic prowess remained as sharp as his strategic mind. He continued to play European powers against each other, signing various treaties that formally recognized Ethiopia's borders, often gaining favorable terms by leveraging their rivalries. He expanded his empire's reach, integrating diverse ethnic groups and regions under a centralized administration, forging a more unified Ethiopian identity. He was a complex figure, a monarch who wielded immense power, yet one who often sought to improve the lives of his subjects through measured, strategic changes. His reign represented a dynamic period of nation-building, a delicate balancing act between embracing modernity and preserving Ethiopia's unique cultural and historical heritage. He was a leader deeply rooted in his people's past, yet with his gaze firmly fixed on a future where Ethiopia would stand as an equal among the nations of the world, never again to be seen as a mere prize for colonial ambition. The final years of Menelik II's reign were marked by illness, a cruel twist of fate for a man who had faced down an empire. In 1909, he suffered a debilitating stroke that severely curtailed his ability to govern, plunging his court into a period of uncertainty and internal power struggles. The Lion of Judah, once so vibrant and commanding, was slowly fading. He passed away in 1913, leaving behind an extraordinary legacy that few monarchs anywhere in the world could rival. His death marked the end of an era, but not the end of the Ethiopia he had so courageously defended and meticulously built. He had done more than simply win a battle. He had instilled a deep-seated pride and an unshakable belief in self-determination that would continue to define the nation for generations. Menelik II's impact reverberated far beyond Ethiopia's borders. His victory at Adwa became a beacon of hope and a powerful symbol for anti-colonial movements across Africa and among people of African descent worldwide. It proved that African armies were capable of defeating European forces, shattering the racist narratives that underpinned colonial rule. For many, Ethiopia under Menelik became a sacred space, a symbol of freedom and defiance against oppression, fostering the burgeoning ideas of Pan-Africanism. He demonstrated that strategic leadership, unity, and a firm resolve could overcome overwhelming technological and numerical disparities. His story, once relegated to footnotes in European histories, now stands as a central pillar of African agency and resilience, a testament to the fact that destiny is not always dictated by the powerful, but can be forged by the courageous. The figure of Menelik II transcends mere historical record. He remains a colossal presence in the collective memory of Ethiopia, a national hero whose name is synonymous with independence and strength. His tomb in the Ta'eka Negest Baita Lemariam Monastery in Addis Ababa is a pilgrimage site, a place where generations come to pay homage to the man who secured their nation's freedom. His legacy is not simply the absence of colonial rule, but the enduring spirit of self-reliance and the proud cultural identity that blossomed under his leadership. The strategic brilliance he displayed at Adwa, his diplomatic acumen, and his commitment to modernizing Ethiopia without surrendering its soul set a precedent for future leaders and inspired countless struggles for liberation across the globe. Yet, like all great figures, his legacy is not without its complexities. His expansionist policies, while uniting Ethiopia against foreign threats, sometimes involved forceful integration of diverse peoples. He was a product of his time, operating within the realities of monarchical rule and the brutal geopolitics of the 19th century. But even within these complexities, his core achievement, the preservation of Ethiopia's independence against the most powerful empires of the day, stands unchallenged. He built a nation that was capable of standing on its own 2 feet, a feat that for most of Africa remained an elusive dream for another half-century or more. The forbidden history of Menelik II reminds us that true leadership lies not just in wielding power, but in possessing the foresight to protect one's people, the courage to defy the impossible, and the wisdom to build a foundation for a lasting future. The story of Menelik II and the Battle of Adwa is more than a mere historical account. It is a timeless epic of courage, strategy, and unyielding will that continues to resonate with profound relevance in our modern world. It challenges us to reconsider narratives of power and dominance, reminding us that the greatest victories are often won not by the largest battalions or the most advanced weaponry, but by the spirit of a united people fighting for a cause greater than themselves. Adwa stands as a stark repudiation of the idea that any people are inherently destined for subjugation, a powerful affirmation of agency and self-determination against seemingly insurmountable odds. The image of Menelik, leading his diverse armies, armed with a blend of modern rifles and ancient spears, against a European colonial power, is a powerful metaphor for facing down seemingly impossible challenges. It whispers a message of defiance to anyone who feels overwhelmed by forces larger than themselves. In a world still grappling with legacies of colonialism, inequality, and the struggle for genuine self-determination, Menelik's Ethiopia serves as a potent reminder of what is possible when a nation, under visionary leadership, refuses to compromise its freedom. It compels us to look beyond simplistic narratives and to recognize the intricate dance of power, diplomacy, and sheer human courage that shapes the course of history. The echoes of Adwa are not just a whisper from the past, they are a vibrant, living truth, a testament to the enduring human spirit. Think of the sheer audacity required to stand firm when the rest of a continent is crumbling under colonial pressure. Imagine the internal resolve, the strategic genius, to unite disparate peoples and arm them to face an enemy whose technological superiority seemed absolute. Menelik II did not just win a battle, he carved out a space of freedom and self-respect in a world that sought to deny it. He showed that resistance was not futile, that dignity was not for sale, and that the narrative of history could indeed be written by those who dared to defy the prevailing order. His story is a testament to the profound impact a single, determined leader, supported by a unified populace, can have on the destiny of an entire nation and, indeed, on the course of global history. His legacy also forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the past, to understand that history is rarely as simple as victors and vanquished, but rather a complex tapestry woven with threads of ambition, resilience, and often brutal injustice. Menelik's Ethiopia, uncolonized, stood as a living rebuke to the very foundations of European imperialism, a constant, undeniable proof of its moral and practical flaws. It forced the world to acknowledge an alternative, to see an African nation charting its own course, negotiating its own future. This forbidden history, so long overlooked in mainstream narratives, is not merely about an emperor or a battle. It is about the power of an idea, the idea that freedom is an inalienable right, one worth fighting for to the very last breath. So what does the forbidden history of Menelik II, the Lion of Judah, teach us today? It teaches us the immense power of unity in the face of overwhelming odds, the critical importance of strategic vision, and the unyielding strength of a people fighting for their homeland. It reminds us that external pressures, however formidable, can be resisted and overcome with courage, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. His story is a beacon for anyone who feels that their voice is unheard, their identity threatened, or their autonomy challenged. It is a powerful affirmation that history is not a predetermined path, but a series of choices, each one shaping the world to come. In a world still navigating complex power dynamics, the tale of Adwa echoes with a timeless message. The spirit of independence, once ignited, can never truly be extinguished. Menelik II built more than an empire. He forged an idea, an inspiration that continues to resonate. His actions continue to ask us, what are the empires, external or internal, that we still need to confront in our own lives? What are the battles for freedom, dignity, and self-determination that still await us? The roar of the Lion of Judah, though from a distant past, still carries its profound message across the centuries. The greatest chains are often those we impose upon ourselves, and true freedom begins with the courage to defy the impossible.